Hello, my geeslings. It's Mother Goose here, aka the Pale King, aka Robinson Earhart. This reminds me of in French class in high school. I had this horribly evil, mean, cruel witch of a French teacher, and for some reason, I don't know why I did this, I started signing my name Maitre Robinson instead of Robinson Earhart, so Master Robinson. And I definitely got a call home for that. From that, she was very upset by me referring to myself as Master Robinson in her class, and maybe she should have been. Anyway, this is episode 11, or the introduction to episode 11, with Haim Gaifman, the only Haim Gaifman in my life. And I gave him the glowing introduction he deserved in episode 1. He's the first of many repeat guests on the show. So without going into that huge introduction again, he's a philosopher, a mathematician, a logician, a linguist, a computer scientist, a probability theorist. I think that, or I've had this thought before, that if this were 1,000 years ago or 2,000 years ago, he would be an Aristotle or an Archimedes or a Newton or something like that. He's just a tremendously smart guy and a great teacher. In this episode, we talk about Alice in Wonderland, Bertrand Russell, a figure that Haim's been studying for a while and who's grown on him immensely over the years. And also, and mostly, we talk about paradoxes. Haim wanted me to mention that he's taught a course on paradoxes in the past, but hasn't taught it for several years. And I also gave him no advance notice on the topic, but he still does, I think, a phenomenal job. We've already recorded a couple more episodes that I will release in due time, but without any further ado, my geeslings, I hope you enjoy this episode. So, my first question for you today, Haim, is you've told me a number of times an anecdote from Alice in Wonderland.
Yeah.
Because you like to say that you spread yourself too thin with your work. Because you've done work in computer science, mathematics,
philosophy of language, and so on and so on.
Vagueness, all of these things. And you have a story about the knight on horse.
Yeah.
Can you tell me that again?
Yes, there is. This is not from Alice in Wonderland, but this is from Alice Through the Looking Glass. Lewis Carroll wrote several Alice books. The most known is Alice from Wonderland, which is considered the best, but From the Looking Glass is also extremely interesting. Now, in this book, various figures which represent chess pieces appear, and it turns out that part of the plot of the book there has to do with moving things on the chessboard. And eventually Alice's gets to the last. I think Alice's is with the whites, and then there is a black or the red. I mean, it is white.
Like the Red Queen.
Yes. So there is a red queen and the red king, and there is a white king and the white queen. And the red queen is the most sinister.
I'm just making some minor adjustments. You can keep going.
And the red queen is the most sinister figure there. I think the red king, the white king, is kind of absent-minded and so on, and the right queen also. They don't know how to fight, to be efficient and so on. They are naive, confused creatures, roughly speaking. Now, at the end, Alice advanced to the last row. She becomes, I think Alice is a pawn. And then when she reaches the last row, she becomes the queen, and then the white has to mate the red or something like that. This is the overall picture of, not picture of one aspect of the plot in this book. But on her travel there, she is threatened by the Red Knight, and then she is saved from the Red Knight by the White Knight. But the White Knight is a very strange creature. He's a little bit confused. He's very well-wishing, but is completely impractical. Somehow he manages to save Alice from the Red Knight. And then she notices that the White Knight rides with an assortment of all kinds of items which might be necessary. I don't know, pots and dishes and so on, and the whole household. And among the items that he has is mousetrap.
Yeah, mousetrap.
Mousetrap and hives.
A beehive.
Beehives.
Mm-hmm.
The beehives would be practical if there would be bees there making honey. So she asked him, why do you need to carry with you beehives? So he said it would be very useful if this attracted certain bees and they produced money, which I like very much. And then she asked him, why do you have to travel with mousetrap? And she, I don't see any mice here. He said, yes, right now there are not any mice, but suppose there were mice moving around, and then I would be very uncomfortable, and the trap would be very useful on these occasions. So there are no bees and there are no trap. And he says, well, I don't know, perhaps the bees keep the mice out and the mice keep the bees out. That's his answer.
So you're like the knight, the White Knight.
I am just like the White Knight, that I have this project and I devote some time to this, and then I have to present a paper, and then I write it up very hurriedly and present it, and there it is. So the projects keep threatening each other.
That's funny. So yeah. One project is like the beehive, and the next one is like the mousetrap.
Right.
And Lewis Carroll, though, he wasn't just a great author. He was also a logician. Was he a mathematician or a logician?
He was not a mathematician, but he was a quite decent logician. And I have a book. I don't have it here. I mean, I can go and bring it to you to show you. There is a thick volume like this of which is actually a textbook. Mm-hmm. in this type of logic, and the point is that the exercises are you have a lot of assumptions, and you have to find out if something follows from these assumptions or not. And essentially, this is some sort of calculus of monadic predicates. And the point is really a logical exercise to find out if this conclusion if a certain conclusion is valid or not.
But it significantly predates Frege and first order logic, yes. Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
One of my favorite books is Alice in Wonderland, the annotated edition.
Okay.
It has all of his original drawings, but then There are all sorts of annotations.
Wait a minute. It has the Tyndale's drawings. When he wanted to publish it, he wanted to make it popular, but actually Tyndale was much more famous than Lewis Carroll, who was practically unknown or very little known. So he actually got most of the income from publishing this book. Tyndale was a famous illustrator, and it wasn't easy to get him. But Lewis Carroll decided to get him, and so the book now comes together with original Tyndale illustrations. And I saw some attempts to do it with others, and there's no comparison. These are really the best illustrations.
Well, I learned something there, but this book is filled with all sorts of annotations, and you don't realize when you read it straight through how many references and puzzles and little things he has going on. And you can tell after the fact that he was clearly very interested in logic.
Yes.
And reference, like with nobody on the road.
Yes, that's exactly the point.
Yeah. Do you happen to remember that story with seeing nobody on the road, or no one is fat?
No, yeah. He says it's all kind of people conducting a conversation under different assumptions what they mean, but the conversation makes sense to each one. So I think, who is it? It is the White King who asks the White White Bishop or somebody. He's attending, and if somebody comes down the road, and the light, it's kind of sunset, or it's not full daylight. So the white bishop, I think, or somebody there, puts his, he's put his palm of hand over his eyes and looks like that, to see. And he says, well, I see nobody on the road. And the king says, wow, you can see nobody on the road. I hardly can see anybody on this road in this light. So you must have very good eyes, and so on. And obviously, the king interprets it as nobody is a name which denotes a certain person, and the bishop interprets it in the usual way, and that's where the joke comes in,
right?
And they can and then they continue. So they say the king says to the bishop, so you see nobody, so you must, how does it? No, it appears that the bishop himself arrived there, and the king asks you, did you pass somebody on the road? And they say, I saw nobody on the road. So he passed nobody. So the king tells him, therefore nobody is running slower than you. And the bishop gets offended. He said, I'm sure I'm doing my best. So you see, again, under the same misunderstanding, but it makes sense to both of them. Because if he says nobody runs slower than you, that means you are the slowest runner.
Right.
And the bishop thinks that this is a kind of a reprimand or a criticism of him. And he says, I do the best I can. I run the best I can.
And then that sort of leads into Russell, where nobody plays the role of a subject or an object in a sentence, but...
Not exactly.
No?
Well, yes, of course.
And then you have to replace it with a direct description.
With with a definite description or something like that. Yeah, this is there. Yeah, you can say Russell inherits this. This, and Russell himself provides his own story If you remember on the noting, he has a whole story about a boat owner that somebody comes and visits him, and he says, I thought your boat was bigger than it is, and the man and the host gets offended because it implies that he doesn't have a big boat as he should have, and he said, this is nonsense. My boat cannot be bigger than it is.
Right.
And the whole thing is a question of, in Russell's way, this is an ingenious. Russell could just put something like that just as kind of in a moment, even in
Right.
live conversation, find out something like that. And this is very smart because it depends on the scope of the definite description operator, whether the scope is minimal or maximal and things like that.
Right. I certainly admire him for that, because even when I'm in a conversation with you where nobody else is present, I stumble over my words and I say direct description instead of definite description.
Right.
But from what I recall, he was just on a dime. He had witticisms to toss out, not just in his papers, but in conversation.
Yes. Something I heard, I wasn't present, I never met him, but I had Sidney Morgenbesser tell about Russell that, let me try to the story. He spoke about he spoke about Greek philosophy and the Jews and so on. And let me try to see if I can remember exactly the context. I forgot the name. Who was the name of famous ancient Greek philosopher who was supposed to go to Egypt and to acquire wisdom there and so on. One of the big names of ancient philosophers.
I don't know who it is.
Just give
the
me
big names: Aristotle, Socrates,
no,
Plato.
no. The one that preceded them. The one.
I know you like Eubulides.
No, Eubulides is later, much.
Zeno.
No. Oh dear. Geez, no, I don't want to tell the joke because the joke depends on this. The one of the ancient one who said all is water, and all of the ancient metaphysicians. The one who said all is water.
I don't know.
There was one who said all is
Democritus. Heraclitus.
No, Heraclitus. That's.
I'm just throwing out names.
No, there was.
Demosthenes.
No, Demosthenes was a speaker. The beginner, there was Democritus, but somebody from the same period, or perhaps a little earlier, who says all is water.
Well, I imagine that the name will come back to you.
Well,
eventually.
perhaps, okay. I mean, you see, this is the scourge of old age that you forget names.
Do you want me to? I can look up on my phone. What should I search?
All is water.
Okay. All is water philosophy.
Yes.
All is water Greek
Philosopher. This was the ancient metaphysicians.
Thales of Miletus. Thales.
Thales.
Yes.
Okay. So he mentioned Thales. And then...
Hold on. Yeah, so he's renowned as one of the legendary 7 wise men of antiquity, and he's remembered primarily for his cosmology based on water as the essence of all matter, with earth a flat disk floating on a vast sea.
Right. Okay, so this is Thales.
Okay.
And there was apparently a legend that Thales went to Egypt and he got a lot of wisdom by studying with the Egyptians. With the Egyptians high priests who had their own esoteric knowledge of the world. So there was such a legend. So a little old lady, he gave a talk, a popular talk, and the little old lady...
Was it at the YMCA in New York?
Might have been that actually he gave talks at what's later became 92Y,
Okay.
which is a Jewish institution there.
Okay.
He gave the talks during the Second World War. Okay. But I don't think that this was the case. But he gave a talk to a popular talk. Runnels made money and is living by giving popular talks and writing popular books. And then a little old lady raises her hand and says, Dr. Russell, you seem to imply that there was a kind of a story about Thales going to Egypt and getting his wisdom there. Now, I read in the Bible that Jeremiah also went to Egypt. Do you think that they might have met there? And there is, really, this is in the Bible, that Jeremiah went to Egypt after the destruction of the temple.
Mm-hmm.
After the destruction of the first temple, Jeremiah, his pupils, he was a very old man, but they feared some sort of... there was an act in which the local representative of the Babylonians, the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. That the High Commissioner was killed by a little group of insurgents who still did it, and then it was a stupid thing, because then it was clear that the Babylonians will came and kill everyone and so on. So the students of Jeremiah took him with them, and they flew to Egypt. This is what is written in Kings. In the Jewish Bible.
Okay.
The king took him. And that's why she says that Jeremiah also went to Egypt. And she asked him whether they could have met that. It was obviously the history prevented any kind of possibility, but Thales was much before, and so on.
Mm-hmm.
And Russell's on the spur of the moment, he said, yes, my dear lady, they really did meet there. And you know what Thales said to Jeremiah? She said, what? He said, all is water. And do you know what Jeremiah answered to Thales? And she said, what? He said, oh, is me. Always me. And that's what he answered. And this was the only, Russell continues, attempt of the Jewish spirit and the Greek spirit to converse with each other, but it came to nothing.
That's funny.
So he invented on the spot the whole meeting with a conversation and so on, just like that.
Yeah, that's...
He
was a gifted orator.
Yes, he gifted. On the other hand, Russell seems to have some blank spots in which he wrote complete nonsense, and he thought that they make sense.
Really? I didn't know about that.
Yes.
In what areas?
Mathematical logic.
Okay.
No, it is known, the Principia mathematica. Okay, there is a big story that, according to... this requires really a lot of technical detail.
Okay, we don't have to go into the Principia.
But it is known that the Principia is based on the theory of ramified, the type theory and ramified type theory.
Mm-hmm.
So the ramified type theory is a type theory which is implied by Russell's philosophy. But if you do that, you cannot reconstruct the natural numbers.
That's a big problem.
From pure logic. You cannot. And it is known that you cannot do that. And Russell realized that. Therefore, Russell introduced an additional axiom to the Principia.
Of reducibility?
Yes, axiom of reducibility, which will bypass this. But the axiom of reducibility is really a way of avoiding the ramified type theory altogether and the principles and so on.
And there's nothing logical about it.
No, there's nothing logical about it.
Right.
It is an artificial way of overcoming the difficulty. Because, look, Russell was a logicist. Both Frege and Russell were logicists.
Which means?
He thought that you can derive all of mathematics from pure logic.
Right.
Now, Frege was also a logicist, but of a different kind.
Mm-hmm.
He thought that number theory can be derived from pure logic, but geometry not. So they have different notions of what do you mean to derive, but they were both logicists.
Mm-hmm.
And Russell realized that the whole program couldn't be carried out as it is. So he introduced another axiom, the axiom of reducibility, which in an artificial way avoided the issue. But it means really that you give up on the theory of types, of ramified types. But it is phrased in such a way that it is not obvious that it is. And Russell himself says, well, we will have to handle this issue later on to see whether we can avoid it. But without the axiom of reducibility, I cannot get mathematics, and obviously we need mathematics. So Russell, like a good pragmatist that he was when it came to his own research, said, okay, we'll assume this, we'll return to it later and see whether we can handle it.
Right.
Okay. Frege would immediately stop everything. It said, woe is me, there is a contradiction.
Mm-hmm.
Russell say, yeah, there is a contradiction. So yeah, okay, true, but we'll write another volume and we'll deal it with that. That was a typical Russell. So he said that. And there it remains. Then all of a sudden, around 1926, 27, Russell thought that he saw a way of keeping the theory of ramified types and without the axiom of reducibility and solving the whole problem and so on. 1927. And he published a paper on that. And this paper appeared as Appendix B in the original edition of the Principia. Okay. So you start reading the paper, it's gibberish. It's not clear what he's writing there. It is really gibberish. So those people who was curious to see how he does it, thought that he lost his mind or something like that. And it is known that some mathematicians, in particular Gödel himself, left something undone, but when they tried after his death, when they opened it, it was something written very near his death, and when they opened it, they couldn't make any sense out of it. So you have some blankouts like that you know, if you saw Beautiful Mind, this
I did.
You see, so he himself, Russell Crowe, who the real figure,
John Nash,
right? John Nash, who got a field medal later on for.
He got the field medal?
I think so. He later on
Field.
For that, because he
I thought you had to be under 40 to receive that.
So what? John Nash was quite.
He got it before he was 40.
I think so.
For game theory?
Oh, yes. No, but it was a fixed point theorem.
Okay, I'll just look it up
just
for fun.
Look this up, and I think he got it. But in any case, this is not a historical truth that John Nash wrote nonsense, but it is a historical. But in the film, when Russell Crowe plays his role, and you remember they come and find out the place in which the whole walls are filled with formulas and arguments and so on, and it makes no sense at all.
Right.
So they realize that he went crazy.
He got the Abel Prize.
Okay, fine.
That's the one he got.
Okay, fine. He did get an important prize later as a recognition, not for this, but what is known as a fixed point theorem.
Okay. I'd like to switch topics a little bit, though.
Wait a minute.
Okay.
We come to Appendix B.
Okay.
So Appendix B, it was exactly like that. What he wrote there was nonsense. He couldn't make it. And when they realized that, in the later editions of the Principia, there is no Appendix B.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, that's funny.
There's no Appendix
B. They took it out for him.
They took it out for him. And then there was a big convention in honor of Russell, and Gödel asked him whether he succeeded in fixing this lacuna that he cannot use a theory of ramified type to get the natural numbers. And Russell excused himself, saying that there were 20 years that he didn't think about it, and that was the end of it. So Gödel himself was aware of the failure of Russell, and this is the only case of somebody in his full intellectual capacity who has some sort of an hallucination or intellectual hallucination and makes him write gibberish. That's very interesting. I don't know if usually it's somebody very old who writes something and you cannot Gödel himself did it.
Yeah, I've never looked at Appendix B, and I probably couldn't understand it because of the notation that he used back then.
No, I mean, there is no Appendix B. You have to get an early edition of the Principia Mathematica in which there will be Appendix B. Later on, you find Appendix B, there is no Appendix B. But I have both of them, one with, one without.
Okay. So what I wanted to talk about is you've taught at Columbia a number of times a seminar on paradoxes.
Yeah.
That I unfortunately didn't get to take because you haven't taught it while I was here.
Yes.
And I think the notion of paradoxes, people just like puzzles, and they grip the popular imagination in a way that some areas of philosophy, like nobody passing somebody on the road, might not grip everybody.
Right.
So I'm wondering what some of the paradoxes were that you touched on, or that you do touch on when you teach that course.
Well, there was a Zeno's paradox, the paradoxes of Zeno, and there were paradoxes of relativity theory. And there were all different disciplines, and the idea was that students who concentrate in a particular direction would find a paradox or a group of paradox in which they can
write a paper.
One was in epistemology, was in the surprise examination paradox.
Could we? Okay, keep going. I think we've talked about that one.
Yes. Okay.
But what are some of the other ones?
The other ones were paradox of decision theory, for instance.
There was one paradox of decision theory that I think you mentioned to me once before that I found very surprising. And let me see if I can piece it together, and then you could, if it rings any bells, you can tell me if this is the right one. But the one I'm thinking of is, it's sort of like a game show design where you're told that you have two boxes.
Oh, yeah.
And
Newcomb's paradox.
Newcomb's paradox, yeah. Can we talk about Newcomb's paradox?
Yeah, sure.
Could you explain it for me?
Okay. So Newcomb's paradox, Newcomb was a physicist, so this was a paradox which was made up by a physicist. Is it
meant to be a paradox about physics?
No, it's meant to be a paradox about, in a way, perhaps, but it's really a kind of a metaphysical paradox.
Okay.
So you are given two boxes, and you can either choose to take both of them, and then you get the money which is in both of them, the total sum, or only to take the right one.
Okay, so there are two boxes.
You can either choose...
Each one has money in it.
Each one has money on the same, or each one has money on it.
And you can either pick both boxes or just one box.
Or one particular box.
The box on the right.
Yes.
Okay.
Now, this is a paradox. So obviously, common sense would teach you to pick both of them because then
if they both have a non-empty.
Yes, it depends what is the sum. I mean,
right, but if there's money in both, then you're guaranteed to get more money by picking both boxes than just one. Okay.
But now comes the thing which makes it paradoxical.
Okay.
You are told that a superior being, a much superior being that you cannot imagine how this being thinks.
Something like God.
Well, okay, yeah, but in any case, much more superior to you, knows what you will choose because he knows how your brain works and so on. So it is something, it's not God, but somebody whose ability with respect to you is godlike almost.
Sure.
So he knows what you will choose. And therefore, based on his knowledge, he prepared the boxes.
Okay.
And he prepared it so that if he knows that you will choose both of them, he put in each one of them a small amount of money.
Let's say $10.
He put, but if he knows that you will only choose the right one, he put in it $1 million.
Okay.
Now, which one will you choose?
Okay, so I just want to reconstruct it. So we have the two boxes before us. And we have the person who, or the godlike figure for me, who presumably knows what I'm going to do.
Yes.
And if he has determined that I'm going to pick both boxes, he puts $10 in both boxes.
Yeah, the sums are more realistic in the setting, but that's fine.
But if I'm only going to pick one box,
the right box,
then he puts $1 million in that box.
Right, something like that. So there are two.
Okay, I think I see what you're saying, but I think that the money has to be different for the paradox to make sense.
What do you mean the money has to be different? It's dollars.
Okay. So then, I would obviously pick one box.
Why? But because you say there is no causal relation between what you pick. The money is there already.
Right.
So you don't cause, and you can check it. The whole setting is such that you can check it. That after you make your decision, the money remains the same as it was before.
Right.
So there is no causal relations between your decision and the money. So obviously you should take both of them because if all that you are reasoning is by causal decision, then you should choose both of them.
But if I choose both boxes, then wouldn't I just get $20?
Yes, that's it.
But I want the $1 million.
Yes, but that's a paradox.
I'm lost.
Because you want the $1 million, right?
Right.
But so you choose one box.
Yes.
But your decision has no causal effect, and this can be verified. Okay, so imagine a scenario like that. There is a big audience. This is done in a public appearance. Okay, and so there is on the stage. There's a stage. Your turn come to be on that stage. Then there is an arena, and people see that, and the people who are in the arena, they see what is in the boxes.
Right.
But you cannot see what is in the boxes. And in the arena, suppose your parents are there, and they wish you all well. And they see whatever is in these two boxes.
They see either $20 or $1 million and zero.
Yes, but they say take both boxes, whatever they see in the boxes. Their advice to you is obviously take both boxes because you will get a little bit more if you take both boxes. So they wish you to choose. And yet, if you choose both boxes, you get a teeny amount. But if, you see, they say, yes, okay, here there is $1 million, and here there is $10, a million here and $10 there. Perhaps it makes a difference between a million and a million and 10. It doesn't matter. If there is this, why shouldn't he choose the two boxes? So they wish that you choose the two boxes. But they cannot, but of course you don't know what there is in two boxes, so it is as if your parents and your well-wishers are in a different world. They see there and they say, yes, yes, go on, John, choose the two boxes. You will lose nothing, because they see that the boxes are not affected by what you choose.
Right.
And then, lo and behold, if whenever they see that the two boxes are like this, and you take the example, then the sum is small, and if they choose only the right box, then the sum is big.
So is there a solution to this paradox?
Yeah, there is a kind of solution, which I think is the right solution.
Ooh.
The right solution is, first of all, that the paradox depends on certain assumptions, that this is a superior being creature, that he knows he can do that. Maybe the story is false.
Right.
Okay? And you can always construct a paradox if you make additional presuppositions that are contradictory.
Right.
Okay. So how do we know that these additional presuppositions are not contradictory? Convince me to believe the story. I might disbelieve the various assumptions there. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then there is how do you verify how can you verify that these assumptions really hold? Okay? I can say, well, look, I mean, you give me contradictory assumptions, of course there is a paradox. You know the paradox about the barber who shaves all people who do not shave themselves.
Yeah, why don't you tell it though?
Okay. So this is a paradox in which there is a little town.
Isn't it Russell's paradox?
Russell mentions it. I don't think that it is Russell, but Russell explicitly explains it.
Okay.
So the assumptions are natural. I mean, there is a very little town, and there is a barber in this town, and anyone who doesn't shave himself goes to the barber.
Okay.
And the barber shaves him. So this is the assumption. So the question is, does a barber shave himself or doesn't he shave himself? So each one of them gives a contradiction.
Because if he shaves himself, he doesn't go to the barber.
Yeah, yes, because he shaves.
But if he goes to the barber, then he doesn't shave himself.
Right. Something like that. No, or the paradox is like this. All those who shave themselves do not go to the barber. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And so this is the assumption of the paradox. And the answer to this paradox is the presuppositions are false. There is no such sound. There is no just because
and it's contradictory.
Because the paradox himself doesn't gives you a contradiction. The assumptions give you a contradiction. If you ask about the barber, does the barber shave himself or doesn't he shave himself?
And is this
if he shaves himself, he has to go to the barber. He is the only barber, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Is this paradox at all related to the liar sentence?
Yes.
Could you tell me what the liar sentence is?
Okay, let me say. First of all, the answer to this paradox is your presuppositions are false.
Right, that's how
there is no such town, and there is no such barber, and so on.
But there are other paradoxes that can be resolved.
Right.
But this isn't one of them.
This is not one of them. And Russell himself gives this resolution. He says the answer is very clear. The presuppositions are false.
But when you say they're false, you mean that they're contradictory.
Yes, there is no such a town. There is no... Okay. Now, the liar paradox cannot be explained on the assumption that something is false.
So what is the liar paradox?
The real liar paradox, it's not the paradox which is usually says all Cretans are liars, and so this is Epimenides. The Epimenides is a paradox in which somebody says all Cretans are liars. And it turns out that he himself is a Cretan. But this by itself doesn't give you a paradox.
When you say Epimenides, are you saying that he devised this paradox?
No, this is I don't know, but this is what it is called in the classical literature.
Okay.
It is referred to as the Epimenides.
Okay.
Because, so Epimenides is a Cretan, and he says that all Cretans are liars. Now, what does it mean? What does it mean that to be a liar? Can a liar be always says a lie, or mostly says a lie, and so on? So there is really no contradiction here if you analyze it in this manner.
Okay, and you're saying that that's sort of the original version,
yes,
but it's not the real paradoxical version.
Right.
The
real paradoxical version is given later in Eubulides.
Okay, and I know that Eubulides is one of your favorite philosophers.
Yes, because his paradoxes are deep paradoxes, and they gave rise to a whole literature.
And I think he had like 6 or 7 of them. He has the bald man. He has
he has a Sorites.
The Sorites.
And he has and yet the liar paradox.
Okay.
The liar paradox is simply a person says, what I am saying now is not true. Okay?
Okay.
So nothing is false. He is making this assertion.
Right.
Now, is it true or not true? If it is true, then what he's saying now is not true, and if it is not true, then it is true.
Right.
So there is no false presupposition there. He simply makes a statement.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. And anyone can make such a statement. So this is the true liar.
Okay.
Now there are other versions of this in which do not involve talk, but there is a room, and on this room there is a blackboard, or in the blackboard there is a single sentence which says the sentence that is written on the blackboard in room 96 is not true. It turns out that this is room 96. Then again, you get a paradox.
I see. And this has spawned a tremendous amount of literature, right? People are still debating it today.
Not really, I think.
Really?
Not really. It's more or less known how to...
Really? I thought people were still thinking about it.
No, there was a very rich... Might be, but it is more or less... It is more or less assumed, or people usually agree, that if you have the truth predicate inside the language, and if in the language you can construct self-referential sentences, or sentences that refer to themselves by descriptions, what is written on the blackboard, and so on, so then you get a contradiction. And the answer is yes, natural language has contradictions.
Okay.
And we don't pull, and the moral of that is that you cannot do the semantics of the language inside the language itself.
So one way of treating the paradox is just accepting that it's paradoxical and it's a feature of our language.
Yes, and the natural language is not an ideal language. The natural language, which allows you to do something like that, is really contradictory if you try to formalize it completely.
I see. And formalizing it completely in this case means giving rigorous rules.
Yes, giving rigorous rules. And so there is what's called the Tarskian hierarchy of languages. So there is...
Tarski, who gave you your PhD at Berkeley.
Yes, yeah, okay. So the Tarskian hierarchy is first of all, a language, and then there's a language which gives the semantics of this language, and then a language which gives a semantic to the second language, and so on. So each language is more powerful because it gives the semantics to the other language below it, but not to itself. And then it can go through all the ordinals and
So this is a concept that's probably not familiar to most people. When you say that one language gives semantics to another language,
yes,
you're saying that it sort of defines what the rules
For
mean?
truth or falsity.
Okay. In the hierarchy.
Right.
Okay.
So it gives semantics. There's a standard way of giving semantics. This is all very well defined. That means natural language cannot be formalized as it is, but certain parts of it which are important can be formalized. And natural language, so to speak, enables us to move in this hierarchy, but no language can give semantics for itself. You must have a higher order language which gives the semantics for the lower language. So if you want truth, you can give in a language truth, a truth definition for the lower languages, but not to itself. That is the picture that arises. This is a Tarskian picture of semantic of language, and that is the answer to the liar paradox. So the liar paradox is a real paradox, and the Tarskian approach is that natural language is too rich, and if you are not careful, you get contradictions in natural language. But you have to replace it by a hierarchy of languages, and that's the case. And it is known that if something, what we call a semantic predicate, is like a truth predicate, a predicate which gives you the semantics, or through which the semantics can be defined. So that is the Tarskian answer to that. Then there's been all kinds of playing variations with this that you can have still. It's a long story. So, but this has been treated very much in this way. And from this you can. It is no. I mean, actually, the way Gödel found his incompleteness result was to use something similar, but I don't want to go into this. This will bring us into deep water. But Gödel, and this I think can be almost certainly proved, got his idea for the proof of the incompleteness theorem by considering possibilities along this line, what a language can say and what a language cannot say.
So was he influenced by Tarski then?
No, on the contrary. Tarski as there is what's called indefinability of truth. Tarski proved the indefinability of truth using Gödel's result.
I see.
You see, Gödel's result involves various so to speak, tricks. And one of the tricks is to give a syntactic description in which a language can give its own syntax, and this can be done. The language which gives its own syntax, but what is there's a story there. I can go through the story and give you an outline of the whole thing, but we will have to go through Richard's paradox.
Richard's paradox, though, I imagine is a bit too much. Well, actually, Richard's paradox is the paradox about naming numbers, right?
Something like that.
Okay.
It is something like that.
The least number definable in so and so many words, right?
Yes, something.
Okay,
like
let's talk about it.
No. First of all, yeah, but this we have to find. First of all, we have to say something about the diagonalization method, and this is Cantor. The thing starts with Cantor, then there is Richard, then there is Gödel.
Okay.
But this is a long story.
Okay, let's.
You say Cantor, the genius who established set theory, gives.
Let's save this topic for another time because I think this one might be a bit too. It's very interesting. Maybe we'll talk about it. Next week or in a couple of days. Yeah. But for now,
paradox do you want to?
Let's talk about the surprise exam.
Okay, so the surprise exam. Teacher comes to class and tell them next week there will be a surprise examination, and that means you won't know the day before that the day later there will be an examination. That tomorrow you won't know.
Right. The idea of a surprise exam is that you don't know it's going to happen.
No, but here the surprise exam is defined exactly as an exam that is given Thursday, but you don't know on Wednesday whether it will be given on Thursday or not.
Okay, so the surprise exam, it's always going to be on a Thursday, but you don't know if it's going to happen on Wednesday.
No. I give you an example. It says, look, let's take a concrete situations. American universities, teaching days are 5 days in a week.
Okay.
Okay. So you come and say, next week there will be a surprise examination, and that means you won't be able to predict that you wouldn't be able to predict the day before the exam is given on that the exam will be given tomorrow.
Okay. So you're told there will be a surprise exam next week.
Yes.
But then, okay, so you don't know if it's going to be Monday. On Monday, you don't know if it's going to be Tuesday. But if it hasn't happened, then on Thursday, you know it has to be on Friday, if you're guaranteed to have one.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is the way that the paradox works.
Okay.
Because because this is one way. And then
where's the paradox? Is the paradox that on Thursday it's no longer a surprise exam because you know it's going to come?
Yes, but you believe what the teacher says. And the teacher does the following. The teacher gives this declaration, okay? And the teacher thinks to himself, okay, you know what? I will choose a day by a toss of by a lottery. Okay, I will just draw the name of the day. So I don't know, and I don't know, and what the lottery. But I will make it so that what the lottery does, that is the day. So nobody knows, and he thinks the student certainly cannot know what this lottery did.
Right.
I mean, no means be sure that there is an exam. You don't know. The students argue like this. Look, the exam cannot be given on Friday because if it wasn't given by Thursday and there is an exam, then I will know that it must be on Friday. So the surprise examination cannot be given on Friday.
Right.
Now, since we know this now, we can again know that the last day is Thursday, but by the same reasoning, it cannot be on Thursday.
Right.
So they go back, and they don't.
I see.
And they think that they have proven that there cannot be an exam.
Okay, so
then they are very surprised when it is given on Wednesday.
So they have proven to themselves that it can't be given because it can't be given on Friday because they would know on Thursday.
Right.
By the same reason, then, it can't be given on Thursday because they'll know on Wednesday.
Right.
So they've effectively ruled out that there will ever be a surprise exam by their reasoning, but lo and behold, the professor gives it to them anyway.
Yes.
So how do you respond to that then?
Well, the standard response, which is essentially the correct response if you don't, is you have no grounds to consider that what the teacher told you is the truth. Suppose the teacher always was truthful with respect to all kinds of factual things. But this is a claim that is being made on your own knowledge. And your own knowledge is knowledge that is derived by assuming certain things that the teacher told you are true. Now the teacher, for example, there might be some sort of mechanism so that if the exam if the exam was not given by the first 5 days of the week, then there is an automatic mechanism that gives it on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so this you can be convinced that there is such a mechanism. Okay, or you know that there is such a mechanism, that the administration has set up such a mechanism that if the exam was not given on this way, it was given on Friday. This is it. But what the teacher tells you is more than that. It tells you that you will not be able to know. That means he makes a promise about your own knowledge, and you have no position to assume that this part of what the teacher told you is true.
So the problem with the story is the assumptions that they're making aren't grantable.
Yes. You don't, if you think that you don't have any grounds to believe the teacher if the beliefs involve something on your own knowledge.
Okay.
Because knowledge is something that you can deduce logically from what the teacher says, and as long as it is some events in the world that you have that doesn't relate to that, you can believe it. But the teacher is not guaranteed to be all the time telling the truth if it is about your own knowledge, what you can deduce. There is a kind of a cycle there.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a result. This result was given by Quine, and it is a correct answer. But this now happens a whole area of investigations about what you can deduce. This is really a result in epistemology, what you can know and what you cannot know. Okay.
So what are some of the implications?
The implications is like that first of all, the teacher cannot guarantee 100% that what he told the students will be realized. He has no control over that. So suppose the teacher decide to choose the day by tossing some sort of random device. He will pick the name of the day from a sack in which there are all kinds of little pieces of paper, and he will open by lottery. He will open the ticket and see what the day is. So now, if the day happens to be, if he opens it as Friday, then this means that he himself didn't fulfill his promise. So you cannot have a surprise examination in which you are guaranteed that your promise will be fulfilled. And now there is what is the optimal condition for the teacher to make this failure of fulfillment minimal.
I see.
So it opens a whole lot of what are the strategies for the teacher, how the lottery should work. And but the conclusion is, you want to have a surprise examination, you must include that with a certain probability it will not be a surprise examination.
Otherwise, of course, you'll run into the first issue where it's entirely predictable.
Right. Now, it turned out that this paradox had a real historical origin at the time of the Second World War. At the time of the Second World War, the Nazis bombarded many big cities indistinctly. And there was what's called national defense, or these were people who were mobilized in order to supervise other people going into their shelters and or manning the anti-aircraft guns and so on. That means those who either directed what other people would do or shot against the attacking planes. Now, shooting against the attacking planes was usually you miss them, but you could have not missed them. So this was civil defense. So there was a civil defense. Now, the people in charge of the whole thing, the high command, they wanted, like a teacher which gives an exam, to make sure that the civil defense operates correctly. And the way to do it is to declare a surprise examination. They would say, well, next week there will be an exercise in which civil defense preparations will be checked. We'll see if this. But you won't know a day before, because if you know the day before, they will also obviously make it like somebody who crams the day before on the exam.
Mm-hmm.
And you will have enough time to prepare so that you will be passed with perfect grades. Okay, so they want to put them under pressure to prepare, but not allow them the outlet of knowing the day before, and so that they can prepare just for that day. So that was a real situation. I think it was in Norway or some Scandinavian, in which this was a good method of forcing the civil defense to have a good general preparation, which will hold for no matter what day they will give it.
That's funny. That's a good story.
That's a story. You think it's somebody's invention? No, it was a real situation in Second World War, and you come to think of it, it is a real situation also in class. If somebody look, I mean, students are not motivated by what the teacher says, or they have to go over the material and you have to learn it and so on. Students usually postpone it until the time of the exams. Now the teacher wants them to force them to go over the material without knowing that there will be an exam. So he tells there will be an exam, but you won't know it before. That's all. It's the same kind of situation. Now you can see, now there is a lot of probability calculus to analyze this, what will happen. You can see that if you say, for instance, not next week, but if you say next month, then obviously you can have a surprise examination without very small probability that there will not a surprise examination, because choosing from the next 30 days is practically impossible. So if you tell them there will be a surprise, you can have also a maximum choice to give them for the next week, for the next 2 weeks, and so on. You see, if you give them for next month, they will not cram for the exam. They will just postpone it.
Yeah,
but if
so
they know
it's a slim chance.
Yes, it's a slim chance. But
so they can wait.
They can wait. But if you know next week it will be, then you prepare moderately well without
for Monday.
Without cramming just the day before.
Right. Okay.
So it is really a very interesting example in epistemology.
It is. Okay, Professor. Thank you so much. This was really fun. Thanks for talking with me about paradoxes.
Well, it was my fun.
Yeah, me too.
Because I like these kinds of things. And there's a huge literature on that.